Sponsored by the Turkish Youth and Sports Ministry.
Hello and welcome back to Towards Olympic Games 2020. I am your host, Jafar Hasnan, and today we have a very exclusive guest who will explain us what goes on in the sports industry when someone gets injured. The world of sports is full of amazing achievements, wins and losses. Athletes all across the world have a very strict regimen to follow in maintaining not only their mental health but also their physical abilities. While some may be at the receiving end of career-ending injuries, others may have to go under the knife to recover and get back to their very best. Injuries are very common in the world of sports today. Considering the intensity of the games, be it volleyball, football, weightlifting, or any of the other sports that are part of the Olympics. Now, to analyze how injuries are part of this entertaining process, we discussed how athletes overcome these injuries and what are the best ways to go about them. Now, let's have a look at this interview, which our A news correspondent Merve Turgut conducted with Dr. Osman Lapçın, a very famous doctor who has treated many professional athletes. So, let's have a look.
I'm here today with Dr. Osman Lapçın, who is the doctor of orthopedics and traumatology. He will be speaking to us about sports injuries. Doctor, welcome to the show first of all. And I want to ask you, what is a sports injury? Can you tell me?
Well, before we talk about the sports injuries, let's talk about sports itself briefly. The activities that we do daily to become healthy, like walking or some exercises, they should not be considered as sports. These are the activities that we need to become healthy. Sports is done within some certain rules and principles, within certain space and within certain fields. You have to compete or entertain at least activities involving two persons. Also, of course, we have some competitions running against time, and these are the activities that are forcing our bodies. These are called sports. These type of activities are searching your limits, and these could cause some injuries while conducting these sports activities. We call these injuries as sports injuries, not only professionally, but also we have some sports injuries for entertaining purposes. For instance, we have a tennis game on the weekend, or sometimes skiing, or having a football game. Some people might get injured. These are also considered as sports injuries. These ligaments or other types of strains could be described as sports injuries. Within sports, we have lots of strains, for instance, in muscle strains. Apart from that, it depends on the sports branch. But we generally deal with injuries as the strains, some in knee, or some ligament types of injuries. We encounter them really often. Apart from that, some tendonitis injuries, or in your wrists, or your necks, hernias, or in your forearm, you could see some injuries as well. These are the general injuries that we see. But quite often, we see the strains or the tensions in the muscles.
Why do athletes encounter sports injuries?
Well, these types of injuries, first of all, as I described at the description of the sports itself, we need to have some certain rules. If you don't follow the rules, then you might get injured. But also, if you push the limits of your body, then you could injure yourself. Therefore, you need to be well prepared. To say football is a game of tactics and technical skills, but you need to be prepared for that. You need to have a good condition. You need to have strength in your muscles. You need to have flexibility in your muscles, which means for a game, for the weekends, before you have to be prepared, you have to be ready for the game. As the strength of muscle, you have to be ready, especially the leg muscles, either volleyball, basketball, tennis, or football. You need to be prepared, especially in these sports. Also, you need to have stretching before the game in order to avoid some injuries. Without doing them, if you go into the game, then you could see some injuries. Even the personnel who are really prepared for this, you could see some injuries. Maybe if you don't practice enough or if you don't prepare yourself enough, you could see some injuries too. These are the things that you should avoid. In order to prevent these injuries, first of all, as I said before, you have to train, you have to practice. This is not a sport that you go into the field and have fun. No, you have to be prepared, you have to train well, and this training should not be only tactical. You have to have different types of physical activities before you go into the training, before you start the training actually, for 15 minutes or at least 20% of the training should be warming up. You should be doing the stretching. And after that, you could continue warming up. And then you could start with the exercises that specific sports require. And then after that, you could continue with the stretching and warm up. Maybe you could do those, and then you could finish the training with these type of preparations. After you do this, if you go into the match or game or the competition, then you would minimize the risks of injuries, but you push the limits. You should not forget this.
Any way to prevent a sports injury? Can you tell us the ways?
At the time of injury, you should know that when the moment you are injured, the injury time has begun. You should never forget this. Everybody is watching me. I have to rescue my team. I have to save my team. You should not act like this. No, because sports itself, it's an activity. It's a game on one hand. It includes many types of meaning, but you should not become a hero. There's nothing more than important than the human health. These criteria should be taken into consideration. If you think that everybody is watching us and you want to become a hero, then you should see that there should be some expectations in us for the long run. If you continue playing the game while injured, then you could harm yourself in the long run, and this would decrease your skills in the long run. Maybe some people have to retire after the injuries, unfortunately. Therefore, you need to do what is necessary after you get injured. With the help of the healthcare team, you need to listen to them, especially when there are serious injuries, and the treatments should be done completely after the injury time. You should not think that you should only go through an operation, medical operation, but you should do what is necessary, a rehabilitation phase, for instance. Apart from that, even if you finish that treatment, in order to go back into that sport, you have to train the muscles that were remaining untrained, so that you should strengthen your muscles while you are injured. You have to be very sensitive and very with discipline. For instance, if you have a torn ligaments operation. You could do this operation for within 30 minutes, but that doesn't finish there. It's a long process. You have to approach this with very attention and care. And if the sports person is injured, you need to take care of them. It takes a long time to recover. It could be up to 1 year. If you have a really good condition in muscles, and after that you are really have a good rehabilitation, they should not come back to competition less than 9 months. Therefore, you need to be very careful on this in order to go back to sports.
National athletes are getting ready for 2020 Tokyo Olympics. For them not to get injured and to become a champion, do you have any advice for them? How can they prepare for the Olympics?
One thing that we should take into consideration, there's the camping or preparation era. As I said before, we have to take into consideration the criteria that we have talked about. You should train very hard with discipline, and this period should be completed very well before you start training. As I said before, you have to do stretching and warm-ups for 20% of your time of your training. This is a must. Maybe you should run before the training, and after that you should do the stretching and do some warm-ups, and these are very important in order to avoid the injuries. And after that you could complete your training. After you are ready, you could go into the competition, and you should do what is necessary of that given type of sports, but you should not forget that. You should always be prepared. For instance, we see some football fields are not really adequate enough to have a healthy competition. You should be checking those fields, and also you should have necessary equipments. And within the game, you need to see how much you push the limits of your body. You should not push further a limit that you are not used to at the competition.